Hi, ladies and gents, and welcome to the latest podcast from the Trinity Tims. My name is James Forrest. I'm the host of the Celtic blog, and I'm joined here by my two colleagues, Eric Knott of Read Celtic and Joe McHugh of Video Celts. So, tonight we have welcomed back a hero to the club. We'll get to that a little bit later on, but we don't have a game to talk about this week because thanks to the weather, we got a postponement. Now, my way of thinking is that I feel bad for all the fans who missed out in the game, but the team has needed a break for such a long time. I can't remember a period where October, November, December was just absolutely insane with the number of games we played. And so, whereas we're all feeling a bit fed up and looking forward to Wednesday, a bit more than even we would have been, I think that it's come at the right time. I think the players and the manager have probably massively benefited from it. And while it allowed the opposition to close the gap, albeit temporarily, no bad thing. Joe, what do you think?
First of all, a shout out for Davey. On the comments for the last one, he compared the three of us to three I Am Jollies. I'm not sure if Eric knows who I Am Jolly is, but point taken. The Norwegian expert suggested we should smile more, so we'll try and smile more. Davey is, of course, one of the finest janitors in South Lanarkshire, possibly the most successful Janny in the world, perhaps, but serious matters. It was definitely helped the players, absolutely no doubt about it. It would have been a little bit of a chore. It could have been hard work on Saturday, so they'll have benefited without it. They would have prepared for it, so they'd have put in some decent training on Friday, and it was only Saturday morning it was called off. So definite benefit for the players, but we are still without Kyogo, we are still without Maeda, so we've handicapped ourselves for that one, but we'll discuss that later on, I'm sure. Over the piece, the players all badly need a break, and they'd no exertions on Saturday afternoon, they'd no recovery to get through, so they could have their minds fully on Aston Villa, and I'm sure they took the opportunity to watch Aston Villa toil to a one each draw with West Ham on Sunday, 4:30 kickoff. So that's not too much time for Aston Villa, and getting hit by more injuries, particularly in central defence. For the supporters, it was a sore one. I really think with all the evidence, the match could have been called off on Friday night. There's no real signs that things were going to get better. Clearly, the club tried, but when the structural issues, and we don't know what was involved in it, but it looked as if it was quite a job to get things sorted, and it could have been called off earlier. But for folk, I don't know what time. I read on Kerrydale Street about the boats are travelling over from Ireland, and as if they've been given the nod, the game's on. But between about 10:15 Saturday, game off, and not much can be done about it. It's good that it's getting replayed, rescheduled quickly. So we'll have a Portuguese guy involved for that one. But again, the timing's all getting very neat. So that's going to be Motherwell at the weekend, Dundee midweek, Wraith Rovers, and then it could be as soon as the 11th or 12th of February that we're playing a Champions League tie. Most likely it'll be a home match. So I'm sure the manager's made best use of the time. I don't think any of the players will have regretted. I don't think any players needed minutes in their legs on Saturday. They could probably do with minutes out of their legs. So that's my take on it. What's your thoughts on Saturday?
Well, can I come back, Eric? I mean, you're right. The game probably could have been called on the Friday night. I mean, I don't want to get any board bashing here. That can come later on. But I went and reread the Celtic statement on Friday night, and what caught my attention was that they had said that because of the weather, they were unable to even evaluate the scale of the damage. And I thought, there's no way this game's going ahead. If the best they can do is evaluate the damage tomorrow morning, fixing it's an impossibility before 3 o'clock. I mean, they could have called it on Friday night. They probably should have called it on Friday night, but I'm sure they did make their best efforts to put it on. But I just thought that sounds like an impossibility to me. There's no way this game's going to go ahead. Sorry, Eric.
No, I mean, look, I suppose every cloud has a silver lining, as they say. That it's good for the players, definitely. It's good for the preparation for the Aston Villa game. They could have done with that break. But you have to feel sorry for the supporters who were affected by this, and I mean, a shout out to one of our own, from our own supporters club, Don Quinn. He went over there and he was bringing his kids to their first game. And where we're based in the southwest of Ireland, it's a long trip. It's a fair haul across, between flights and getting accommodation and all the rest of it, So, like I said to you guys recently, it's a weekend for us away costs as much as it nearly costs for you guys for a season ticket. So it's a big occasion. So, look, to be fair to our club, they've kind of looked at it and they've said we'll try and look after him in whatever way we can. So, it does affect people, especially people who are traveling long distance. But at the same time, yeah, like I said, every cloud is a silver lining. I did notice on the Parkhead Faithful there, the Facebook page, that apparently Irish Celtic supporters are a very entitled bunch and we should be banned from Celtic Park. So don't know what that was about. I thought that was somebody going off on one. Yeah, we were told that we were writing Muppets showing up at Celtic Park in GAA jerseys and that we should be banned. So I don't know what guy was going off on one about that, but I found it fairly amusing anyway. But yeah, look, like I said, it's good prep for the Villa game, and that's no harm at all that we have that extra bit, to the extra bit of time to get ready for that game, because no doubt that's going to be a tough one. But I don't think we could have got a better prep for it, considering what a big game it is. So yeah, that's my take on it. It is tough on the supporters that travelled, especially the guys who travel overseas, and for all the people in Scotland as well who are gearing up to go to the game and travel from different parts of the country as well. But look, Stormone, it affected a lot of things. It was pretty harsh over here. There was like over 100,000 homes without power here in Ireland, so it hit pretty harsh. I don't know how it affected you guys over in Scotland, but it did affect us fairly badly here. Luckily enough, we didn't get much damage here. Now a few gutters down and things like that, but outside of that, not too bad. So yeah, that's I suppose everybody suffered from it, even Celtic Park.
Yeah. Absolutely, guys, absolutely. I read a few trees fell down, that was about it. And luckily no damage was done. So today we completed the signing of Jota. One incoming, one outgoing, because Kyogo confirmed his deal at Rennes. So at the start of this window, the manager had one key priority and possibly a couple of other areas where he wanted to do some business. We suspect the left back area is something that he's seriously concerned about, especially all the rumours about Alex Valley. And so we're working on that. Although if we don't get Tierney, we won't lose Valley. I don't think that we are quite stupid enough to let two players go without replacing them first. But of course, Kyogo's departure means that we're down a striker. But at least now we have signed our wide player, who the whole window was going to be basically judged on. It's not going to be judged on that any longer, but we got our wide guy. Jota is back. I wrote a piece about this today, about him and Tierney, sort of, about this idea that the grass is always greener somewhere else when you're at Celtic Park. But any player who's ever been at Celtic Park and stays here long enough knows that isn't the case. There are very few of them who have ever left and not regretted it in some manner or another. Virgil van Dijk may be one of the notable exceptions. But most of them have misgivings and they have regrets later on. And Jota and Tierney have certainly come full circle now. For various reasons, for different reasons for both of them. But in the end, there's no place like home, and this is where they feel welcome and they feel loved and they feel appreciated. And that's why we're getting them back. Not because Michael Nicholson's a genius, no, because both players want to come home. And in terms of Jota, I cannot extend it any other than a warm welcome. I love the guy. And I was gutted when he left. And I suspect that Brendan was also gutted when he left. And that's another one of the reasons why. he's coming back. So what do you think? First, Joe.
Interesting. I think you're a bit misty-eyed about it all. The reason they're back is because their moves didn't work out. It's not career plans, but
it doesn't matter though. But these guys both of these guys will have other options. They've picked Celtic. They want to come home. I like that. I think that's nice.
Yeah,
and yeah, maybe a bit misty-eyed about it, but it's a fact.
Yeah, well, it's also a fact. They would. Plan A for both of them would be to continue elsewhere. Celtic is a very, very convenient, friendly, and happy plan B for them. So we can go on with.
I don't really believe that, but okay.
You think that Tierney and Jota, both of them, their hearts set and playing for Celtic?
I think both of them could have gone somewhere else. I think there were options for both of them, and they've chosen to come back home.
Yep. Yeah, but if things had worked out in Saudi Arabia or in France, Jota wouldn't be anywhere near Celtic. And if Mikel Arteta wasn't such a horrible little individual...
Well, we can get to that because there's an issue there. There definitely is something to talk about there.
Tierney would still be at Arsenal and progress his career, but we've got them back. And if those two play together, it's an absolutely brand new look to the Celtic left side. We're all very used to Greg Taylor. Not many of us knew what an inverted fullback was before Ange and Greg Taylor invented it for us. It's worked very well. Yep. Greg Taylor spends more than half the match in the centre of the park in midfield. Kieran Tierney doesn't do that. Kieran Tierney is probably going to be a very different player to the one that left. I think his moves forward will be much more selective. He'll not be bombing forward at every opportunity. He'll be more selective. Jota is a funny one. He's got in a brilliant season. I mean, in terms of Europe, he scored away against RB Leipzig and Real Madrid in the Champions League. The previous season, he'd scored away against Ferencváros and Bayer Leverkusen. That's top quality. But the question is, what impact has the last 18 months had? Is he going to be rusty, or is he going to be absolutely motivated, flying, desperate to get going? We're playing at that Champions League round of 16 playoff is on February the 11th or February the 12th. That's 2 weeks away. Yeah. There's not much time. I don't think there's much prospect that Jota can start that game, but he can be a very interesting option coming off the bench. The impact, I mean, Jota can play in the right, but he's more effective in the left. Yeah. We're very used to Maeda playing in the left. So if we've got, for a short spell, we had three wide options. We had Abada, Jota, and Maeda, and that seemed to work quite well. Abada seemed to be the one that missed out most often. I didn't start so often, but he would always come on somewhere between 60 and 65 minutes. So it'll be interesting to see how it's managed. It might be a month or so before Jota's starting matches, but if he can come on and make a real impact, then it saves on Kuhn and Maeda. So they should both get the benefits of that. Yeah, we've seen so many games recently. If either of them goes off and it's Yang or Palma, with the best will in the world, it's a hell of a drop. Yeah. If Jota's coming on, there shouldn't be much of a drop. Certainly not coming on for 20 minutes, 25 minutes against Motherwell, Dundee and Wraith Rovers. So got to be positive about it. It's a top quality player coming back, but you can't make any real judgment until we find out what's going on with the striker. So we're down to a striker. Let's see. Daniel Cummings hasn't played a minute of first-team football. He's been on the bench once. Johnny Kenny's played about 20, 25 minutes, and he can't play against Aston Villa in midweek. If he gets added to the squad for the playoffs, it means someone else has got to come out of the squad, so that looks unlikely. Jota takes Kyogo's place, so there's still a lot of movement. Hopefully there's a lot of movement before we can make any judgments. Tierney, that's a good one. Tierney and Jota are both back, and well, no, Tierney's not back. We suspect he'll be back. He could have signed a pre-contract. Might be signing a deal as we are speaking just now. So we'll hold fire on that. Tierney will be back for next season 100%. We don't know the percentage chance that he's going to be back this month, but there's a bit of movement. But as I say, everything will be decided, whether it's success or not, by what happens in terms of a striker. So that's my tuppence worth. I'll pass
Joe, what's
it
your
back.
prediction, though?
What?
What's your prediction for how we're going to feel when this window ends? Are we going to be satisfied? Are we going to feel seriously shortchanged?
Massive. On past experience, I think we're going to be sold short. There's not been many windows where you've said, that's great, we've got what we wanted. The striker should, if they knew that Kyogo was leaving months ago, then Paul Tisdale and others should have had various options lined up, and they should have been in the building before. So we can now be held to ransom. Clubs know that we're desperate for a striker. If it's a lone striker, I think it's almost pointless. We should be having a striker in that gets to know the system. Hopefully, it's an instant impact, and is certainly firing on all cylinders at the start of next season for vital Champions League qualifiers. So there's massive question marks over head of operations Paul Tisdale. He can prove us all wrong. He can bring in a great striker, but at this minute, I'm looking at it. It's run for 7 o'clock on the 27th of January. If Kyogo made it known months ago, I suspect Celtic were just as keen on business as Kyogo was. Then we seem to be leaving things a bit too late, and we've got money available. It's not as if we're selling players to buy others in. There's money in the bank to buy players, and we'll see on the 3rd of February. We'll see what the team lineup is for the rearranged game against Dundee. So I suspect that we won't get everything that we want. That tends to be the way. Most managers say, yeah, I could have done with another one or two. I suspect that will be Brendan Rodgers' feelings, but who knows? They might be beavering away as we speak, but as I say, 27th of January, pushing 7 o'clock, we're still looking for a striker.
Eric, what do you think? First, tell us how you think this is going to go. Same question as I asked Joe. Are we going to be disappointed, let down, or are we going to be
well?
around the boardroom as Keith Jackson thought our chairman might be?
I touched on that very subject on an article I did, I think, on Saturday in relation to Kyogo's departure. I read Joe's article on that, and then I read Chris Sutton's article on the same subject. And it sort of set me to thinking, and I put down a few points in the article that I wrote in that I thought that exactly what Joe is saying, that if they knew that Kyogo was, pushing for a move months ago, then they should have been organising to get a striker in to replace him. And I said that this window wouldn't be a success if we signed Tierney and Jota, but we did not sign a striker. That getting Maeda to play through the middle, it's not acceptable. It's not good enough, and then having Adam Ida and Johnny Kenny as our only, full-time striking options or first-team striking options, that's just not good enough. And that's my view on it, James. We are going to be sold short if we do not have a striker in before the close of this window. It's that simple. So, as Joe said, they could be beavering away. They could be working on getting a striker in before the end of the window. But time is, it's ticking, and it's ticking rapidly, and there isn't much time left to get this organised. I know the name being bandied about the most at the moment is Matthias Kvistgarden. But Brøndby are looking for 13 plus million for the guy. And that's probably, you'll have the likes of Lawwell and Nicholson balking at that kind of money for a striker at 22 years of age. But the other side of it is clubs have seen what we were willing to pay late in the window last August. So the fact of the matter is, we can pay for players late in the window. We showed that last August at the end of the window when we paid $9.5 million for Adam Ida, and we paid 11 million for Arnie Engels. So we're probably are going to be held to ransom in terms of a price for a striker because of what happened in the end of the last window. On that subject, this to me is not going to be a great window if we don't sign a striker. We're going to be so short. And 100% putting Maeda through the middle and putting Jota on the wing with Kuhn on the other side is taking the cheap option. When we don't need to take the cheap option. We didn't need 10 million for Kyogo. We're not short of cash. We didn't need that 10 million. And I said in my article on Saturday, and I copped a lot of flack for it, that the reason that I reckon the board pushed it through because they knew he would have depreciated by $1 million or $2 million at the end of this season because he's the other side of 30 now. He would have been 6 months into the other side of 30. So he probably would have depreciated more in value. So there was very much, I believe, an element in cashing in on him because they can get the 10 million now. Interestingly enough, CQN said he was going for 8.5 million. So is it 10 million euro and an 8.5 million pound deal? Do we know that? You know what I mean? So, I've said my piece on that. I've said we'll be so short if we don't sign a striker. But at the same time, yes, I'm happy to see Jota back. I'm very happy to see him back. I did an extensive article on Jota. I did some work yesterday on Jota, and I looked at Get Football, which is a French online English magazine, an English kind of online French site, and they went into fairly deep detail as to why it didn't work out. And one reason was a detrimental lack of preseason, and that he just wasn't fit enough. And like the Rennes fans did like him, and they liked what they saw, and he scored on his debut, and it all started very well. But his manager at the time was Guy Stéphane, and Guy Stéphane liked Jota. But as soon as Guy Stéphane left in the early part of November, Sampaoli came in, Jorge Sampaoli. And Sampaoli from the get-go said he just wasn't part of his plans. Yeah. So, I suppose going back to what Joe was saying, probably there's an element of Jota wasn't given much choice because he knew there was no future for him at Rennes. And yes, Celtic, he knew if he came back to Celtic, 100% there'd be a future for him. And I did say that Brendan Rodgers was probably very disappointed that he didn't get to work with him. When Brendan Rodgers was sizing up for the job in June of 23, one of the main players he would have been looking at was Jota. And he would have said, he would have said in his own mind, this is a guy I'd like to work with. This is a guy I reckon I could get, something really good out of. I've seen, what he can do under Ange Postecoglou, but, what would he be able to do under me? But I also said in yesterday's article that Rodgers really thinks about things in depth. He assesses things in depth. He will not fire Jota into a starting role until he's happy and, content that he's 100% fit and ready for action. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see Jota on Wednesday night, because of that. He might come on, as Joe said, as an impact sub, maybe with 15 minutes to go or something like that. But can he really have an impact after being out of this, after being out of the team for so long, which effectively, he has been out of the Celtic setup for nearly 2 years. Well, okay, year and a half or just over. But will he have an immediate impact? He might surprise us all. He might just come on and hit the ground running. But definitely they'll assess his fitness levels and they'll see what level he's at. And his sharpness. What's his sharpness going to be like? That's one thing that I'm sure Brendan Rodgers and his coaching team will be looking at in training, his level of sharpness. So yeah, it's a great signing, and it's really solved our wing problem. But are we looking at a month or two before he's up to speed and he's really at a level that's going to have a major impact at Celtic? So yeah, I'm delighted to see him back. But I think, and as I said in my article, I think it's going to take time and people will need to have patience here. And that's what Get Football said as well. They said the main thing here is that there's patience needed with Jota. And that's what I think is going to be needed.
Well, I mean, yeah, I couldn't agree more with you there, and Joe as well, in terms of his fitness. But where I think there's a slight advantage here, I think, is that Rodgers probably isn't looking at starting him every week anyway. Not at the moment. The way I see it, we're bringing in a wide player to give us options from the bench. That was it. That's why I would have settled for some young up-and-comer who hadn't quite made his reputation yet, but had enough games that we knew he had some talent. Jota's a signing far in excess of anything I expected on the wide position. And there is a lot of what Rodgers is doing here, I think, that it's about projecting towards the summer. But, and this is the crucial but, if we bring someone in on a short-term basis to cover Kyogo's position, then some of the work that's being done towards the summer is automatically undone because that player's gone and you'll never see him again. And what we all agreed, what we three has talked about and we all agreed was that this window should be about not only consolidating for this season, but projecting it in next season. And there seems to be some sort of gap between what we expected the club to do and what the club has now done. So, I mean, I guess the next question to ask you two on that basis is, would you regard a loan signing as being an acceptable outcome here? If the player reached a certain level of quality, if the player was somebody who we knew could come in and do a job in the short term, right? And it was only for the short term, would that be an acceptable type bit of business for you, Eric?
Well, I suppose we can look at Adamaida this time last year. And the big mistake that we made with Adamaida is that we didn't bring him in on a loan to buy. We bought him in just on a loan till the end of the season. And I would have to say, I mean, I was underwhelmed at the time. I think you were underwhelmed, James. And so were you, Joe. I mean, I don't think any of us were blown away by that signing. But that, I think we had based our opinions on his previous...
When I was looking at his attributes and whatnot and his physicality and the fact he had a bit of speed, I thought, well, I mean, if Rodgers is looking for pace and power, this guy ticks the boxes. Yeah. And if Rodgers is just looking for a photo fit player, an identikit player who can just slot right into his system, that will work. Yeah. I didn't know anything about the guy other than that, and I thought,
I suppose where I was at, I would have known.
I see that there's an idea, there's a brain working behind that, but
yeah, I mean, I would have known
nothing about the guy, and I was really angry when I found out that we didn't have an option to buy because I knew that if he was a success, his value was just going to go through the roof, and we were going to get grafted if we were trying to buy him. And we made that even worse for ourselves, of course, by not doing it immediately. Yeah. Instead, waiting until Kyogo was injured and we were desperate. But, I mean, on that basis, say we got a good loanee, right, and we had an option to buy him. I think
that's fair enough. That's kind of what I was angling towards. I mean, if we were to bring in a decent level striker with an option to buy, but with the price locked in so that there's no bullshit, let's call a spade, because that's what it was around the negotiations then in summertime. It's like we're talking about Jota. We put there was a 6 million loan to buy option with Jota, and we paid the 6 million, and we know what we got for that 6 million. So if we bring in a young and up and coming striker, and we put in a loan to buy option at 7 or 8 million, something along those lines, and that's set in stone, then that's acceptable. Yeah, it's acceptable because we know the guy is going to be permanent if he works out. And, sometimes the try before you buy option does work. You know what I mean? We just didn't have that option with Adamaida, and we ended up being pissed around by Norwich and had to pay way over the odds for the guy.
But if it's a stopgap player, you're not in favour of that?
If it's a stopgap loan with no view to buy at the end of it, no, that's not acceptable. It's not good enough. It's just not. I'll be honest, it's not good enough, James, when we have the level of finance that we do.
I feel the same way. Joe, what about you?
I don't want a loan signing under any circumstances. No. You're not going to get a good quality emerging young striker that a club's willing to send to Celtic for a couple of months to see how it goes. We've got to be firm, got to be definite in this. Got to be some certainty. We've got Paul Tisdale. We know very, very little about him. It's everything second hand, and like Matt Lowell, he'll be judged on the people that he brings to the club. So we've had plenty of having two strikers wasn't ideal, but now we've got one. And on Friday, Brendan Rodgers made it very clear that he doesn't see Maeda as a regular striker.
He didn't. Why are some people not listening to that? Why are there still some people writing that Maeda can move in the middle, and Rodgers has said that he would be happy with that? Rodgers said nothing of the sort. Rodgers said the exact opposite of that, in fact. We're the only people who noticed that.
Maeda can play as a striker, but if we've got one striker injured, it means that we've got one striker plus Maeda, and Maeda can cover. But Maeda is, I hate doing all these plan A, Bs, and Cs. Maeda can be a decent plan C for short term, but the target is to have two good strikers. We had it with Giakoumakis and Kyogo. We had it with Kyogo and Ida, and we need to find someone else. Bringing in Evan Ferguson, or Tammy Abraham, or Simon Murray, no thanks. We should have books and books and data upon data and strikers all over the place, and we should have the courage of our convictions that this is a guy that fits in well. It's not a case of can we have a look at him, can we see how he goes for a couple of months. Even if you've got an option to buy this player, I don't think you'll get quality players coming in January. We got Jota and we got Carter Vickers for the season. That was because they weren't in the plans of their clubs at that time. I don't think you're going to get a good quality striker that a club's going to say, yep, you take him, see how it goes, and if you like him, you can have him. If he bombs, we'll take him back. I don't think you're going to find that profile of player. So for me, they've got to be signing a striker on a permanent basis, and that's to make an impact and take some of the workload off Adam Ida just now, and far more importantly, is to return to the Champions League group stage next season. That's going to require a bit of forward planning. There's going to be some nasty early season qualifiers, and we must be ready for them. We can't be bringing players in during those qualifiers, or as we've found to our cost in the past. But let's see how it goes with the qualifiers before we decide to sign anyone. We've seen that movie a few times before. Almost inevitably leads to failure. So we should be in a strong position. We should be on the front foot. There should be a striker in before Kyogo left. Kyogo has left. We've still got 6 days or so to get business done. And if we bring in a striker on loan, I think that looks a bit of a failure. So,
I take it Jamie Vardy's a hard no from
me. Can I posit one question, guys?
Yeah, go on.
Right? What connections did Paul Tisdale have to Felipe Jota and Kieran Tierney? Kieran Tierney and Felipe Jota are not the work. They're not the work of Paul Tisdale.
This is the big question, right? And this is the next question. If these are our two targets, right, our two main targets for this window, and now we've unexpectedly got to go out and sign a striker, one of the things that worries me a lot is that if we're going back for Jota and we're going back for Tierney, and we're going back to names that Rodgers knows and players whose qualities he's aware of, does this suggest that he has no faith in our scouting system? And does this maybe explain the hiring of an 88-year-old David Pleat for a while? Joe, what about you? What do you think of that?
No. David Pleat's been hired for his contact book. David Pleat knows everyone in English football.
Well,
so
yeah, I'm sure he does.
It's beneficial to get that. I don't think David Pleat was brought in to identify a striker for us.
No. I didn't mean it in that sense. I mean, in the general sense that Rodgers has no faith in the people who are in the building right now.
It's too early to say that.
Bring in his own guy, one by one, little by little.
It'll be an interesting dynamic. Rodgers knows what he wants. You imagine that Tisdale is very much in sync with Rodgers' needs.
Absolutely, you would hope so.
But there's also some money men in the background, and as you hinted earlier, we don't want to be spending that. Why are we spending that? Why don't we get a £3-4 million striker rather than £8 or £9 million striker? So there's all these debates that we can only guess at. We're looking in from the outside. We're trying to read into different comments and what's happening. But Tisdale was working with us in an unofficial capacity last summer, and generally it was pretty good work in terms of players. The timing was poor. The player, and that can only be down to people at the club. Thanks, Michael Nicholson. Bernardo should have been with us on the pre-season trip to America. Ida should have been on the pre-season trip to America. And trustee McCowan should have been in the door straight away instead of leave. We suspect that
Nothing
McCowan.
complicated about that deal. That could have been done very early in the day.
Suspect McCowan was getting held back because he wasn't a sexy enough name. So once Engels was coming in, once Trusty was coming in, you could bring in McCowan at that time. So it looks like Tisdale can identify players, but the mechanics, the way the club operates, sort of drag those deals out. So again, we're here to guess and give our thoughts and views on it, but it does look as if there's complications there. I would imagine Tisdale must have 4 or 5 strikers that he can reel off straight away.
Of course.
Here's your man, Brendan. This is the guy. This is his strengths. This is his weakness. This is what he can do. This is what he can't do. So those conversations must have been going on for months. When the the summer transfer window ended, we knew the state of play. Rodgers knew the pack of cards that he had. And if we're being told that Kyogo had been England to get away, I suspect Celtic were England to sell him just as much. Then a striker, there should have been options ready to go. Ange style, we should have had a Hatate, Maeda and Ideguchi lined up and somebody coming in straight away. And if by having someone in early meant that Brenz could squeeze a million or €2 less for Kyogo, so be it. But we've now left ourselves in a strange situation, and Michael Nicholson and the Celtic media team might think it's great and dramatic to roll out players at the last minute. But I don't think a buying club gets the best deal when you're bringing in players on deadline day.
Of course not.
So
absolutely not.
We could do with having them in by the time this is uploaded onto YouTube. Time is not on our side. Time is not our friend. We've got the money. We should have the infrastructure with David Fleet, Tisdale, and whoever else. So, what is the delay? What's the problem? We'll find out. But on past records, on the way they've behaved in the past, you can't really have much faith on Celtic delivering the players required for the manager in good time. It could be that somebody's coming in on the 3rd of February. They might get 10, 15 minutes against Dundee on the 5th of February, and a week later, they're on the bench as the backup plan to Adam Ida in a Champions League playoff. And really, that's not good enough. Should have a striker in just now, ready to play all the matches, and then he's more prepared to make an impact in the Champions League playoffs. So we cross our fingers and hide behind the sofa, waiting to see what's happening. To say that Tisdale and Rodgers must have targets in mind. They'll have negotiated, they'll spoke with agents, sounded things out. So over to you, Michael Nicholson. Do your thing.
You know what strikes me about this before we get to Eric? Neither of these two signings are guys that the Mark Law transfer strategists would have signed. One's 25, one's 27. There's not obvious resale value if Jota even stays for 4 of his 5 years. There's certainly not potential resale value in Tierney. These strike me as the kind of signings that confirm that Rodgers is now absolutely in the driving seat. No question about that. That every single player comes through the door gets his sign off, or they don't come through the door. These do not look to me like the Mark Log style signings, and they only confirm that the path we started on in the summer, where we were signing only the players Rodgers wanted, we are continuing on that path. What about that, Eric? What do you think?
I'd be inclined to agree. There is definitely a shift in policy, in signing policy. But I just want to make one point before I go any further on that, and it's just on Kyogo. This whole narrative that he was angling for a move and he was pushing for a move. like we touched on it in a recent podcast, saying like, was Rennes a good move for him? And you said, Joe, look, it doesn't really matter if he's getting more money; it shouldn't make a difference. But you would think if his agent was any good, that one of the stipulations that he'd have put in was that Kyogo wouldn't be playing second division football in France next season. And there's a distinct chance that might happen. And this is what I'm getting to is, would it not have killed us to keep Kyogo till the summer window on that basis? And then his agent, said, yes, he'll move to Rennes in the summer, but we're basing that on whether or not you'll be a top flight club, because obviously he doesn't want to go to a club that's going to be playing in the second division in France. So the pieces don't fit together in that regard, I don't think. I mean, he's going there to further his career. If that team gets relegated, he's not furthering his career. He's then playing second division football in France.
He won't be playing second division football. If they get relegated, he'll be moving elsewhere.
But then what's the whole point of the move then?
Yeah.
He's getting more money, and it was made clear to him that Celtic would rather sell him than keep him around. So when you're not particularly wanted, you move on. That's the reality of it. He's getting more money. Players don't move for less money, so he's getting a bit more money. He's at a club that's wanted. He's done most things at Celtic, and Celtic are delighted to have got €10 million, £10 million for Kyogo. So that ship sailed. Rennes are having an unusual season. Generally, they're the top 4, 5, 6 team in France. Yeah. So this season is the unusual one. And I think it's 5 defeats in the bounce. Their manager, he could soon be getting bounced out again. Yeah. But Kyogo will look at that and say, I'm going to play in France. Things should improve at that club. And it's not as if they're a club that's been promoted to the bottom half. They're not in their usual position. But there's no reason that Celtic should have pushed it through. If Kyogo could be trusted to play against Young Boys Bern last week, he could have been trusted to stay around to the end of the season. It was incredible professionalism of him to put himself into that match. It could have ended in injury for him, whatever. But if Kyogo could be trusted, that his attitude was spot on to play in a vital Champions League match, it could be trusted to stay on to the end of the season. But
didn't happen.
We're talking as football supporters, not as accountants. So there is an alternative viewpoint out there.
There is.
But going back to the point that you put to me there, James, about the fact that you think that Brendan Rodgers is completely in control, I'm very much inclined to agree with that. Because there has been a definitive shift in policy in terms of the way players are signed now. And that, you made the point there that there isn't going to be massive resale value in these guys 3 to 4 years down the line. There isn't going. Tierney's 27, so 2-3 years time he's 30. He's not going to fetch a massive price if he was to move on to somewhere else. The fact is Tierney's coming back to finish out his career at Celtic at this point at 27. Whether Jota will finish out his career at Celtic remains to be seen. That he could have a blistering 2 seasons and then he could move on to an EPL club. There's still that chance there for him.
Oh yeah.
But in terms of the way I think Rodgers is definitely making the calls, because like I said earlier on when I put that question, I said, what connections did Tisdale have to Tierney and what connections did he have to Jota? There is no doubt that Rodgers himself felt he had unfinished business with Jota. And that when the opportunity came, and again, there's so many moving parts in the background, and probably one of those moving parts was that, the board were probably pushing through Kyogo wants to go, let's make the 10 million that we can make off Kyogo now. And Rodgers probably said, well, look, Jota's unsettled. Sampaoli doesn't want him. He's not fitting into his plans. Why not bring him back and let him, fulfill the potential that he really should have had here? Which it makes logical sense. There's no reason that Rodgers wouldn't think that way. However, the other side of it is Rodgers angling? What's he angling for in terms of a striker? Is Rodgers himself content to, move Maeda into the middle? And he made that clear on Friday. He's not. So therefore, he has to be pushing for a striker to replace Kyogo leaving. So whether or not the board and Paul Tisdale can deliver that remains to be seen, and the clock is ticking. That's the bottom line right now. The clock is ticking. So I know the clock was ticking in the end of the last window, and they landed all these signings right towards the end of the window. Are they going to do the same thing again? But reading the media today, Keith Jackson, all the rest of them, Keevans, they're all showering praise on the board. Was it Keevans was saying that Nicholson should be the Chancellor of the Exchequer? I mean, for Christ's sake, get a fucking grip, like. Seriously, I mean, talk about jumping the gun. The window isn't closed yet. We don't have a striker yet. So like, what is it? Like, I mean, as I said, there's brown nosing, but what Jackson did today was just, I mean,
Phenomenal,
that was
wasn't it? Phenomenal.
I mean, I don't know what he's trying to achieve with what he wrote today, but like, it was absolute, sycophantic. But look, like I said, we'll the three of us who do this podcast, we'll reserve our judgment till this window closes and whether we have a striker or not. We'll discuss that point, I'm very sure, come the end of this window in another podcast. And I hope to Jesus that we're discussing it in a positive light and that we have landed the striker that we want, because I can pretty much guarantee that if we haven't, we're going to be letting rip. And those people, those board apologists who criticize us for calling, because we're just calling out what we see. We're calling out what happens. That's all we're doing, I was told in a comment, James, that I should divorce myself from you in one of my articles. Yeah, and my response to that was, no, that's not happening. Yeah. So because apparently you went off on one in the last podcast. So, and I said James was very much entitled to his opinion, and he was very right in what he said. So but yeah, that's what people are saying. They're all saying that we're
see me in a week.
Really,
you see me in a week if we bring in Lauren Shankwood.
I think we'd all, I don't know what we'd say about that, but anyway,
right, well,
that's my view on it.
On that fine note, thank you for that. Let's take a wee peek over the garden wall for a while and analyse what the hell is going on over there. They got ready Kieran Dowell today. He's gone. A couple of their younger players have left. They failed to get rid of Rabbi Matondo, which I thought was very funny. Dessers has scored a couple of goals again and is now the big hero once more. But Keith Jackson said today that if they get £4 million from him, they should accept it. Oh my God. They get £4 million from him, he'll be in a taxi at the airport quicker than he can give his address. So I don't know. I said in a piece recently that he's facing the prospect of being maybe six players down by the time this window shuts, if they can get rid of all of them. But an even worse scenario might be if they don't get rid of all of them, because some of them will walk away for free in the summer when their contracts are up. And the others will have to go anyway and knock down prices in order to give them any kind of transfer budget at all. Joe, how is it looking to you over there? They're in a pretty abject state, aren't they? I mean, there's really no other way to put it than that. They're in a pretty abject state.
It's hilarious. Unfortunately, because of the low standard of Scottish football, they can keep on winning matches.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
They beat Aberdeen, Dundee United, third and fourth teams recently. But equally, they went, four away games in the trot. St. Motherwell, Hibs and Dundee. They never got a win. The telltale, and this is, we don't really like accountants, but there are a few accountants in my family, and one of them pointed out the big giveaway was because they sold players after the end of their accounting period, which is the 30th of June 2024. They're obliged to give details on key events since that period. So that was where they came up with this great stat that they received £810,000 for 1.7 million Connor Golson, £2.5 million Sam Lammers, £1 million podcast, and the rest. So normally all transfer activity would all be mixed up and you wouldn't really be able to read too much into it. But post accounting period, they brought in £810,000 for 5 players. So every agent, every club, all the players know that club is desperate to shift people, whatever it takes. Matondo, he'll possibly be gone, but why rush the deal through when on the 2nd or 3rd of February, transfer deadline day, you'll be able to get a better deal for leaving. So
it's true. This is a fact, yeah.
There's the players, equally, those players are in touch with Cantwell, they're in touch with Goldson, Scott Wright. They know the terms that they got and the incentives that they got to leave. And again, Clement and Paddy Stewart, as I like to call them, are desperate to get rid of bodies, get people off the wage bill. So the players know that. Clement knows it. Clement's doing a decent hand of it. He's putting on a fairly straight face. But again, he's in on it. They shifted the goalposts and they offered him a new improved contract, and he was quite prepared to sign up for that, knowing what his job's going to be. So
you think he signed up for austerity? He knew what he was getting into.
He was maybe told when he came in that we've got £25 million worth of players we're looking to get rid of, and you'll get half that money. When he finds out that £25 million worth of players is maybe worth 3 or 4 million, it changes the game. But he's happy to play along with it. He's picking up his salary, and he's finding out that there's a reasonable formula that you can beat most teams in Scotland most of the time. Yeah. Unfortunately, Celtic tend to be heading for 95 to 100 points most seasons. So you've really got to be knocking out 12, 13 wins on the bounce to be competing with Celtic. But it's going to be interesting times. They're desperate to get rid of players. The players, agents, the whole football world knows it, and there's no windfalls. There's no fantastic fees coming their way. They'd love to get rid of players. If they can't get rid of them, then they're going to have to try and make the best of a bad job come the 4th of February and hobble along. But it's very interesting. It's good fun, but we should be. We do. You can't do two things at once. You can keep an eye on Celtic. You can wish for better at Celtic, but you can also have a right good laugh at the spin and nonsense that goes on there. So there's plenty more of that to come, and I think over the weekend and on Monday there'll be some absolutely desperate attempts to shift some players out, and the players, they've all got their contracts, they know the rules, and unless, like Kyogo, unless it's in their interest, they will not be budging. They'll need to be weighed in to move out.
I don't know if you guys have seen the two stories that are doing the rounds today, actually. The one that Spurs are trying to sign Eggman, and the Chelsea are trying to sign Jeffrey. These are the two stories doing the rounds tonight. That this is a player Ange wants to save him from the sack at Spurs. And the Chelsea have decided that the Brazilian left-back signed from the Cypriot League is the answer to their problems on the west side of the field.
God.
And the Ibrox sites are debating whether or not there is a good case for selling either player.
25 million and we talk.
It's already started. Yeah. It's already started. The craziness has already begun. Eddie, what about yourself?
Well, that 810 grand that you were alluding to there earlier on, I suppose that was probably used to fix the damage from Storm Owen, so that's gone. But it's just, it never fails to amaze me the level of spin they put on, something like Dessers scoring the goal that he scored against Man United, and then scoring the goal that he scored against Dundee United yesterday. That's thrown a couple of million onto his price tag straight off. The media continuously do this with Ibrox players. One of their players has a good run of form, suddenly he's worth megabucks, And Dessers, let's call a spade a spade. The guy is mince. He's just proved. I mean, the Ibrox fans troll the guy all the time. They give him an awful time. And he gets 2 spectacular goals, and now suddenly they're going to get 4 or 5 million for him. I mean, this is just a fantasy land that they live in. It's hilarious to watch it, but yeah, I mean, there is no doubt about it. They're desperate to shift the Drek.
It's just you and me.
That's us back reunited.
We're reunited.
Where were we?
We were just going on about the hilarity of the
I guess
for the Ibrox side. You know, but look, like I said, how much are they going to get in this window? I'd say if they beat that 810 grand they got in the last window, they'll be doing well. I suppose nobody knows what they got for Dowell, do they?
No.
That's an interesting way to look at it, actually. That's
Yeah.
that's our target figure. Just beat what we brought in the last time.
Exactly. So, but
If we sign a lone striker, right? I know this isn't what you guys want to hear, but if we bring in a lone striker and we got 10 million for Kyogo and we bought Jota for 8, we'll probably make more money in this window than they will, shifting 5 or 6 of the first team players and not replacing them. I think that's mad.
yeah,
That's
but I mean,
genuinely mad.
that's the level of accountancy and accountants that we have running our club. You know, this is the kind of thing that they think of, and they think this stuff through really well.
Genuinely.
But
So I was going to talk about Wednesday's game, right? But there is another subject to do with them that we need to cover, because we're the only people who will cover it.
Fact.
Except for maybe Graham Spears, who mentioned it on Twitter, and the MSP. What's his name? Oh God, I can't believe I've
James Doran.
Yeah, James Dolan, who mentioned it. Was the behaviour of the people down in Manchester, how that city must love them. They were fighting in the street, they were fighting in the stadium, they were effing the Pope and up to their knees in Fenian blood, whilst being praised by the likes of Ali McCoist and others. And you would think that if Dolan really wants to do us all a favour, they would have emailed UEFA and asked them what they intend to do about that kind of stuff. Certainly the fighting in the stadium has to be mentioned in some UEFA report, and there has to be some kind of investigation into that. But again, there is an element among their support that just refuses to join the rest of the world. And we've all seen it before. Do any of us have any hope that this is ever going to change, that we're ever going to get some serious action on it? The three of us talked about strict liability not that long ago. Is that what it's going to take? I mean, UEFA aren't even doing strict liability any longer. If UEFA haven't come down on this time, I wonder what they're waiting for. Joe, what about yourself?
It's so predictable. The actions, the behaviour of them, the cheerleaders like McCoist, and the complete lack of comment elsewhere. Spears will put up one tweet, and that'll be about it. No one else wants to touch it, and just all fantastic. All those great fans making their way to Manchester, and the struggles for them to travel back home. But that is entirely predictable. I don't see any stage where it's going to change, and it's almost got to the stage where it seems that UEFA said, well, since nobody in Scotland's bothered about this, why should we bother? And the strange thing was in 2006 at the Villarreal match, that changed. UEFA was a bit surprised and shocked that these chants, these songs were just accepted as Scottish football culture, and that's just the way it is. And then they banned a song. The SFA were forced to ban a song, and then after about a year or two, it was getting heard now and then. Now the song's heard virtually every match, and the lack of action allows the supporters to get bolder with it. And absolutely no one in Scotland is going to take any action about it. 2019, UEFA took action. There was 2 matches where parts of Ibrox was closed, but it seems to have been given a clean bill of health since then. COVID did help them in that front, although there's some strange goings on when Sparta Prague were inside Ibrox and came away with a victory and a goalkeeper with a very sore face. But I don't think there's been any action taken by UEFA since, and if there's any taken on the back of Old Trafford, it would come as a surprise. But it was fairly high profile. It was against an English team. It was on English televisions. So perhaps somebody somewhere might have reported something, but I don't know who the match observer was. Another issue is every game at Ibrox, every European match, there's no passageways there, and it's very rare that any action's taken. Action was taken bizarrely for the Dynamo Kiev game at Hampden, and Hampden was half empty for that match.
Yeah.
There's some problems with the passageway, some problems with the crowding, but UEFA don't seem to have much interest in it. It's not particularly their gig because the Scottish authorities are quite happy with it. And as we are speaking, Celtic will be in negotiations to offer them 2,500, 3,000 tickets to bring their poison to Celtic Park. So
Maybe.
perhaps Celtic might make a stand and say, nah, we don't need this in our place, but we'll wait on that one. Is it March the 15th, March the 16th, that match? It's not too far away. The ticket story should be starting fairly soon, but it's predictable in every single way. And McCoy's, no one more predictable than him. And at the beginning of April, he was on Talk Sport boasting about how he was going to the match at Ibrox and he'd be committing hate crimes. Then he was praising the songs. You could hear the songs. They know the content. No one knows the songs better than him. I suspect he might have joined in once or twice, or at least tapped his toes. And he's still Mr. Nice Guy. So, deja vu. We've been there before. We've seen it before, and it will continue because no one's got the guts to put a stop to it and say enough's enough, or it's time to bin this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm finding that more and more the level of inaction in all of this is giving this more and more oxygen. So you have the likes of McCoist, who is now brazen about what he says on TV. He has no problem speaking fondly of the Ibrox support and their behaviour, as if it's something that everybody can laugh off, and they're a great bunch, and everywhere they go they bring colour and joy and happiness to everybody, because that's the kind of impression you get when you hear McCoist and his bullshit when he's talking about them. So but the problem here at the moment is, and as Joe alluded to, UEFA seem to have just taken the foot off the pedal with this one, and they just don't seem to be taking any action with regards to the behaviour. And what that in turn is doing is giving their fans more and more oxygen to vent their poison on everybody. And it's as predictable as the day is long. They go to Manchester, they cause mayhem in Manchester, they march through the streets of Manchester singing their hate and their vile tunes. And then they're inside in Old Trafford and they're in the home end and they're fighting in the stands. And I mean, that has to be, if it's not them and it's another club that's involved and they're fighting in the stands, what the hell are UEFA doing about that? Surely UEFA, if it was our fans fighting in the stands, do you not think that UEFA would take action? I'm pretty damn sure they would, right? So what is it? What is it that now we're at a point where the SFA are terrified to do anything, the SPFL are terrified to do anything, and now UEFA are terrified to do anything? So this club is now a law unto itself, because every time they go abroad or they go to a game outside of Ibrox, they push the boundaries. They push it further and further, and they're getting away with more and more. And it's just, as I said, giving it more and more oxygen until it's going to get to a point where you're going to have a repeat of Manchester in 2008, because they're getting to that level where they're being allowed to behave to that level. But the thing that I take most offense to is that we're now being tarred with the same brush, and
we are. Yeah.
They're expecting that when we go to Birmingham, that we're going to behave like they did.
It's been characterised a high-risk fixture because of the way they behaved last week.
Yeah, and Aston Villa fans are saying that if they hear Celtic fans singing certain tunes, they're going to kill them. So that's the spin-off to the way that they behave. We're renowned worldwide for our travelling support. Well, we'll say more throughout Europe because we don't travel much worldwide, but for our travelling support throughout Europe, we're renowned for how well we behave and how much colour and joy that we bring to anywhere we go. But they're now destroying that for us. And that's the sad reality of this situation. We now have, as you said, we're being categorised as a high-risk game in Birmingham on Wednesday night. Well, Celtic supporters are never involved in that kind of shit. So why is it that we have to be tarred with the same brush as them? That's the thing that pisses me off most of all in this.
do any of you guys know what the role of FAIR is in all this? They were the ones who used to hold UEFA's feet to the accelerator on this subject, and I don't even know if they attend very many games any longer. They certainly haven't attended very many involving that lot for a while, because we'd certainly have heard that story. Joel, what about you? Have you heard anything about them?
They seem very low profile. It used to be there'd be what the club would be aware that FAIR would be attending. They'd let their fan media reps know about it, and it would be a wee message sent out. Be careful, lads, we might get into trouble.
That's
so,
right.
Not FAIR. Yeah. Initially, it was UEFA that took action, and then FAIR seemed to be following it up. But I don't know if they've got lack of funding or what it is, but hopefully it's not lack of interest. But they just don't seem to be involved now. So it's a decent point you raised there. They just don't seem involved. I'm trying to guess who was it that brought it to their attention in 2019. I mean, it was a game against like St Joseph's of Gibraltar. I mean, that a home match against St Joseph's of Gibraltar or some other side, a name like that. So I mean, if anyone was any doubt about how ingrained it is, it's part of the match day experience. It's part of the DNA. It's what they're all about. But no one has got any. No one seems to have any appetite, no interest. And as Eric said, by doing nothing, that encourages them to think that their actions are normal and they're fun-loving ambassadors. They're anything but. We've got to put up with them most of the time, and a few times a year they get exported elsewhere. But I've not heard nothing from FAIR and not expecting anything. I mean, the game was on Thursday night. We've had Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Not a cheap about any activity. Again, something might be happening as we're speaking, but probably not.
Did any of you guys see any reports on it from the English media? Was there any major perspective?
The Daily Mail had quite an in-depth piece. It was about all sorts involved in it. It was just general rowdiness, bad behaviour, hooliganism. It didn't go deep or specific in that nice, cosy Scottish term, sectarianism.
Yeah.
No. They save that for us, the Daily Mail.
They do.
Right, on to Wednesday's game. Just we'll keep this brief because we've run way over the hour. How do you guys think it's going to go? Eric, how do you think Wednesday's going to go?
I am cautiously optimistic, believe it or not. Yeah, I think we're on a high at the moment, because we really made hard work out of the game against Young Boys. To a degree, the pressure is off because we've qualified to a degree, but only a slight degree. There's still a lot to be gained out of winning this game for us. And I think that's the mentality that Brendan Rodgers is going to approach the game. He's going to have his players geared up to go for it, to try and win it, because of the rewards that it's going to give us if we do. On our day, if we play well and we play similar to how we did, if we can turn on the Red Bull Leipzig style away from home, I think we can definitely take the game to Aston Villa. 100% we can take the game to them. In terms of a scoreline, I would say if we're going to win the game, it'll be very close. It'll be 1-0 or 2-1. It's not going to be a high scoring affair, I don't think, because I think Rodgers will set up defensively. And the idea will be to attempt to catch Villa on the break, sort of how we did in Bergamo and sort of how we did in Zagreb. But obviously, it didn't pay off in terms of goals. But I think, confidence is high. Or if Kuhn is on his game, I think we have a very good chance of getting a goal. If either him setting it up or feeding off Johnston and putting him through.
Biggest night of Adam Ida's career.
Biggest night of Adam Ida's career. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Adam Ida has to come good in this one, and I feel he will. I think, despite the fact that the goal that we scored against Young Boys was given as an own goal, you saw what that meant to him. You saw how much
definitely
he got such a surge out of that, of energy, and it almost revitalized him. And I really think he's going to be chomping at the bit in this game. But it'll be interesting, to see how Rodgers sets up. He has to go with Ida up front, so I don't think he's going to have. Do you guys think there's going to be a curveball? Do you think he's going to set up differently to that, or that he's just going to go with, so, and the question, and then the big question is Jota going to have an impact? Is Jota going to come on?
No, Jota will not have any impact whatsoever.
None. No.
Yeah, that's what I think, and that's what.
No, I can't play. He's not in the squad.
Oh, he's not in the squad. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I completely forgot that. Sorry, guys.
Cut.
By a curveball, what do we mean? Ali Valley playing wide left or something? No, that's really the only thing I can see that this kind of that we be kind of out of the range of the expected options, because he really doesn't have a lot of options. I mean, we're not going to play Lewis Palmer. It'll be Yang, and it'll be Alex Valley. I can't see anybody other than Alex Valley and Yang. Yeah. I can't imagine.
I hope he
making a sudden appearance at Villa Park.
I hope he changes things. Yang is not good enough for this fixture. We've got two decent midfielders sitting on the bench. We'd be better off sticking another midfielder on the park and
Rio playing wide left.
No, nobody playing wide left. Play four midfielders. And have Kuhn and Ida fairly close together up front. We've got good midfielders. We do not have another decent winger. Kuhn, and if it's Yang or Palma, it's a massive drop down. And anyone saying the game's meaningless is nonsense.
No, of course. Absolutely.
It's better to stick in an extra midfielder than to play Palma, Yang, or Valley up front or on the left wing. So Rodgers has shown he's been pragmatic. We've got a fantastic defensive record apart from one night in Dortmund. Is it three clean sheets? Three clean sheets from 7 matches. That's good going. So if we can maintain that sort of defensive discipline, that looks good. And an extra body in midfield, I reckon, is a better option than being weak on the left wing by not quite square peg and round hole, but Yang, Palma and Valley are not Champions League left wingers. So a more practical option, and Aston Villa appear not to be in great form. So it should be a tight match, and perhaps there might be a bit of pressure on Villa from their home supporters that they should be giving the Jocks a good slap. So hopefully we can play on that, and a win each would be very welcome. I'll take that now.
I think Rodgers will feel he has a point to prove though against English opposition. He'll be up for that one big time, because he'll feel, having managed Leicester and having played in that league, he'll feel he has a point to prove he'll want to beat Villa.
Yeah, he's a bit short-changed with his squad. He does have a point to prove, but he'd be far more confident of proving his point if he'd Maeda and Kyogo. None of them will be there, so
absolutely,
a bit more pragmatic. Over to you, James, for the summary.
No, I think you guys are right. I think, Joe, that's exactly the kind of curveball Rodgers should be looking to throw. A complete tactical upending. I don't think Villa will expect that. I don't think they'll be prepared to deal with it. And it's just the kind of thing Rodgers would have done once upon a time. But yeah, I mean, we've kind of hamstrung ourselves in terms of our options. With probably the craziest decision I can ever remember us taking in the transfer market, save for the one where we sold Musa at the final minute of the final day when there was absolutely no hope of replacing him. This one in its own way is even worse than that, because
Yusuf Malumbu.
We only had to wait a week here. We only had to wait 7 days here. This deal could have been done on Thursday morning. It could have been done on Thursday morning, and we haven't done it. And especially when Maeda got sent off, I think all of us thought the same thing that night. Well, it's a blow, but we'll move Kyogo wide left, play Ida through the middle. It'll be fine. And now we've hamstrung that option as well. I don't get what the hell happened. I don't get what the thinking behind it is at all, even a little bit. But yes, I think we can wrap up on that note. Guys, I want to thank both of you for hanging in there for the last hour and 10 minutes. I want to thank our viewers for hanging in there for the last hour and 10 minutes. You guys can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Spotify. Apparently, you can now find us on TikTok, which I think is basically the highlights of one or all three of us ranting about something. I heard that's doing rather well. I don't know anything about TikTok, so I haven't been on it. But if you like what you've seen here, guys, please like, share, and subscribe and tell your friends about us. Thank you very much, and thanks for joining us tonight.
Cheers.
Cheers, James. Talk to you later. Take it
Cheers.
easy.